Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. We're going to dive into something incredibly heavy but absolutely fascinating, the anatomy of betrayal. We're not just looking at dry psychological theory here, no. We're stepping right into a real, raw audio diary of someone whose entire world just basically collapsed overnight. We'll track this incredibly intense journey from that first paralyzing shock all the way to a really profound inner awareness. So let's explore exactly how the human mind survives when the very foundation of your life crumbles in an instant.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Just one day after discovering this massive deception, the speaker in our audio diary describes her state so plainly, yet so powerfully. She says, "I continue to be angry. It's some kind of collapse." Right there, we are dealing with raw, pulsing pain. This is a primal emotion recorded right as the shock waves are hitting. In this moment, logic is totally offline. It's literally just the trauma doing the talking.
Which brings us to Section 1, shock and pure anger. The very first reaction.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how she categorizes what happened. She absolutely refuses to call this just a simple mistake or, a run-of-the-mill affair. To her, her partner's actions are a literal psychological crime, a crime with features of a mental deviation. Because when you think about it, the ability to lie for so long, that requires a level of duplicity that falls completely outside the bounds of normal human behavior. It's an active, daily violation of reality itself.
Moving on to Section 2, a lifelong illusion. Let's look at these decades of deceit.
30 years. Let that sink in for a second. That is nearly 3 decades of actively maintained daily deception. Try to wrap your head around that staggering, almost unbelievable time frame. We're talking about an entire lifetime. It means the person you shared a home with, shared a bed with, and built decades of memories with was just playing a role every single day. It wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, it was a parallel reality painstakingly kept alive. Seeing that profound scale really helps us understand why she calls this a psychological deviation.
And the real tragedy here is that over those 3 decades, she experienced the systematic erasure of her own identity. She feels completely devalued. Devalued as a woman, as a person, and as a wife. And even worse, the entire history of their family is just crossed out. Because when a lie is this massive, the past literally stops being real. Every single happy memory is suddenly up for debate. You realize you've been living in a stage play that someone else cynically directed the whole time.
And that leads us to Section 3, the futility of cold revenge. Here's where a deep logical dilemma kicks in.
At this stage, we can clearly see this intense internal tug-of-war happening in her mind. On one side, you got that primal thirst for revenge, right? That totally natural, visceral desire to strike back and cause equal pain. But battling that instinct is a really mature, bitter understanding that retaliation is actually entirely futile. She admits that getting revenge won't change the past, it won't fix the damage. Watching his health fail or his life crumble won't actually heal anything for her. And honestly, showing that level of self-control right in the epicenter of heartbreak is just stunning.
But, abandoning the idea of revenge doesn't just magically bring instant peace. Instead, her mind is flooded with these chaotic, unanswerable questions. The loudest one being, how do I stop this? Like, if this invisible crime was happening for years, how do you abruptly pull the plug on it right now? The brain is just screaming for an immediate solution to the danger.
And that cascades into an even deeper question. Why do I even need this? Why should she be the one to take on the heavy lifting of stopping him? She really starts to question her own responsibility in this whole mess, wondering, wait, is it even my job to halt his actions? Should she intervene in his distorted reality, or just wash her hands of it, step completely aside, and let him exist in the mess he made?
And finally, we hit the ultimate culmination of this panic. How do I throw him out of my life? This rapid-fire sequence of questions perfectly captures a mind desperately hunting for an instruction manual. She wants a step-by-step guide on how to physically and emotionally amputate this betrayer from her orbit. Anyone who has gone through a painful breakup or betrayal knows exactly what this state feels like. Your brain demands a manual, but that manual just doesn't exist.
So how does she cope? Section 4, the outside observer's position. It's time to step back.
To survive this absolute psychological storm, she makes a profound mental pivot. She adopts what we call the observer position. This is a highly conscious decision to take a huge step back and literally watch the situation from the outside. She is intentionally separating herself from the emotional wreckage. It's an incredibly powerful defense mechanism. By doing this, she sheds the role of the helpless victim and transforms into a detached, clinical analyst studying a case file.
So, from this detached observer stance, she starts dissecting his motives. Like, why did he lead a double life instead of just packing up and leaving? And the answers she finds lie entirely in him, not her. It was about a convenient living situation, comfortable food, and a warm place to sleep. She even suspects there might be some hidden hatred there, or some twisted psychological game he was playing. Realizing that his actions are rooted entirely in his own psychological deviations and this kind of parasitic desire for routine, that lifts a crushing burden of guilt right off her shoulders. She finally sees it was literally never about her. It was about his broken empathy.
Which brings us to our final act, Section 5, Transformation Through Gratitude.
Here we can actually trace the exact conscious steps she takes to reclaim her power. Step 1. Observe from the outside. Step 2. Let go of those raw, burning emotions. And finally, Step 3. Making this incredible leap to a profound spiritual gratitude. I mean, instead of just falling into a black hole of despair over 30 wasted years, she consciously chooses to focus on being grateful for every second of her life. She gracefully accepts even this massive, heartbreaking ordeal as just another part of her path.
And that brings us to the core realization of this whole explainer. She looks back at her past and realizes that she was actually constantly given hints and signs from above, signs whose true meaning she is only just now grasping. So I want to leave you with this really striking thought to chew on. Was this devastating 30-year pain simply a terrible, senseless injustice? Or was it actually a necessary divine intervention? A sign meant to finally force her eyes open to a much deeper truth about herself and the world around her. Think about that for a second. Because how we interpret our greatest crashes ultimately dictates who we become when we finally emerge from the rubble. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and we will catch you in the next one.